Hey everybody, welcome back to the PFN Dallas Cowboys Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Nevarez, and it's just me. You're stuck with just me this week, flying solo dolo here to give you the latest updates from all things Dallas Cowboys from the last week or so. And you know what? Here's the thing. Here's what I learned today. It is Wednesday, January 31st, which so weird that January is already over. But what I learned is I already recorded this podcast and I didn't have audio in the last clip. So a couple of things here. One, things happen. We roll with it. It's okay. And two, shout out to the editing team here at PFN. They are incredible and they really have been helpful with me through this process, not just with this mishap, but throughout the course of the season. So big shout out to them as well. So for the second time, and it'll only be the first time you guys hear this, but for the second time today, we're going to go through a few topics here, including the Pro Bowl, 3 new Cowboys players added to the roster, why they were added, 2 Cowboys players not going to be appearing at the Pro Bowl. We're going to talk about the latest on Dan Quinn, and then Jerry Jones made an appearance at the Senior Bowl earlier this week. He made some comments that I really wanted to get into and go over as well with you guys. So with that being said, let's do this all again, even though for you guys, it's the first time you're hearing it. For me, it's the second time I've said this. So hopefully it's better than the first and you guys enjoy it. While you're at it, go like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for Pro Football Network and /or if you want to do both and be a big fan. Look, I'm not going to hate on that. I encourage that. Go leave us all 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcast. Would really appreciate it so much. All right, everybody, let's get into the latest updates with the players that were added to the Cowboys Pro Bowl roster earlier this week and why they were added. So there were 3 new names that popped up, which were Tyler Smith, Jake Ferguson, and DeMarcus Lawrence. They were added because, well, the 49ers have somewhere else to be the following week, which is the Super Bowl. So they will not be in attendance at the Pro Bowl. So they're taking the spot of some guys that were supposed to be at the Pro Bowl, not obviously going to be there as they're preparing for the Super Bowl. So congratulations to Tyler Smith, Jake Ferguson, and DeMarcus Lawrence. This, of course, being Tyler Smith and Jake Ferguson's first Super Bowl. Oh my goodness, I wish. Pro Bowl appearances of their career. So big second-year jumps there. In total, there will be 8 Dallas Cowboys players in attendance at this year's Pro Bowl. And those 8 players are CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Deron Bland, Brandon Aubrey, Brian Anger, and then, of course, Tyler Smith, Jake Ferguson, and DeMarcus Lawrence. You'll notice that there were 2 names I didn't mention, those 2 names being Dak Prescott and Zach Martin. It was announced earlier this week by the team that Zach Martin would be missing for personal reasons. We don't know what that is, but wishing him the best. As for Dak Prescott, this was a little bit of an interesting drama that unfolded because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually are the ones that kind of broke the news as they announced that Baker Mayfield would be stepping in Dak Prescott's absence since he would not be attending the Pro Bowl for injury-related reasons, which that's not the case. Multiple reports confirming that Dak is missing for personal reasons, not an injury-related absence. So something to note there because there was some confusion going on Twitter on Tuesday when all of this happened. Overall, though, there is speculation of why he's missing. I know a reporter with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram had tweeted out it was in anticipation for the birth of his daughter. Back in October, I believe, when Dak first addressed media, and I was there talking to Dak about all of this as well, he addressed us and he said that his daughter was supposed to be due in early March. So I don't know if that's the case. There's really nothing confirmed. The team hasn't confirmed that. But again, that was just a report from a reporter from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. It would make sense, but still hoping everything is going well for Dak, his family, and his soon-to-be baby girl. So yeah, excited for the guys that are going. Like I had mentioned, both Tyler and Jake, this is their first Pro Bowl, but it is also Deron Bland and Brandon Aubrey's first Pro Bowl as well. So excited to see those guys in action and the renewed Pro Bowl games, if you will, are a lot of fun to watch. So especially during the off season when we don't have anything really to do anymore as far as football coverage, it's fun to watch and it's fun to cover. So excited. Our very own Adam Beasley will be out there. So hopefully he gets some good stuff and gets to talk to some of the players. So keep an eye out for Adam's work coming at you live from the Pro Bowl. All right, I want to switch gears now because, like I had mentioned, Jerry Jones was at the Senior Bowl earlier this week, and he caught up with reporters and media. This was the first time that Jerry and Stephen Jones have both talked prior to the loss. So Jerry talked in the locker room right after the loss, and then we haven't really heard from him since. And then Steven just hasn't talked since prior to the wild card game against Green Bay. So this was the first time reporters got to catch up with both of them. And so, as you know, anytime Jerry talks, there's a lot to unpack. So I wanted to do it here on the podcast with you guys because it was a hot topic on Twitter all day Tuesday about some comments that Jerry had made about going all in 2024. So before we get into it, I want to read you the quote that he talked about. And this is all thanks to Nick Harris, the Dallas Cowboys reporter, one of them. Shout out to Nick for tweeting these quotes for all of us. But Jerry said, quote, "I would anticipate with looking ahead at our key contracts that we'd like to address, we will be all in. I would anticipate we will be all in at the end of this year. So when you say that there is any thought, we will push the hell out of it." End quote. The next quote he had, which was the one that went a little bit more viral throughout the course of the day, and again, we'll get into that. He said, quote, it will be going all in on different people than you've done in the past. We will be going all in. We've seen some things of some of the players that we want to be all in on. Yes, I would say that you will see us this coming year not build for the future. It's the best way I've ever said, and that ought to answer a lot of questions. End quote. Okay, so like I mentioned, a lot to unpack there. What exactly does all of that mean? Well, you also heard Jerry Jones in the first quote mention things about contracts that need to be done. Three specific ones come to the forefront of everybody's minds, that being of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons, the three major deals that the Cowboys need to get done this offseason. Why? Well, because they're going to be cap casualties, if not taking up a lot of that cap space that, you know what, the Cowboys just cannot afford to not have the luxury of that spending money, especially if they do want to be all in, especially when you're talking in terms of free agencies and free agency and trade acquisitions. And so if you want to be all in, you need that cap space in order to do it. So Jerry was asked about the current cap situation going into the 2024 year. And again, shout out to Nick for tweeting this, but this is what he said about those specific contracts and the cap space that is needed going forward with all of it. He said, quote, "Because we're over the cap, you know we can't stay like this. So if you said, well, are you interested in signing Dak and that being much more over the cap? Are you interested in signing Lamb and being that much more over the cap? You've got to look at everything. So I won't be, and I bet you that Steven won't be. Sitting down there and recognizing, well, you've got the situation with Lamb's contract, you've got the situation with Parsons. We won't be doing that because that's the wrong look right now. We've got to see how much we can get under the cap. So it's a holistic approach, more so than any year that we've had." End quote. All right, so let's talk about all of this because, again, I saw y'all on Twitter. I saw the panic. I saw the emotion. Like I said, let's use this to vent with each other. This is our therapy session, if you will, for the day. And by the time you guys hear this, it'll be Thursday because, like I said, there was a little casualty with the podcast earlier. But it is important to mention. So what does all in mean for Jerry Jones? And I think that was really the biggest debate is if you're going to go all in, that means in terms of everything: contracts, trades, free agency, draft selections. Going all in means being aggressive. And so what I think you're going to see is you started to see it last season. And you started to see Jerry be a little bit more aggressive than he had been in prior years in terms of free agency and trading, i.e., Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. And look at the impact those two players alone that Jerry was aggressive in free agency for, acquiring trades with the Colts and the Texans for both of those guys. You hadn't seen that before. So what I think you're going to see when he's talking about going all in is you're going to see a little bit more of that, whether it comes in terms of signing a free agent or, again, acquiring trades. Who knows? If he really wanted to be aggressive, trading up in the draft, you never know. But I don't think it's going to be much different than what you saw last offseason, because last offseason all of us were a little floored that he made not one but two really big trades really for nothing. When you look at the cost of those trades, they were great trades for the Cowboys, and then they were even greater and greater, continued to get great, more great. How many times can you say great? Throughout the course of the season, with the impact that Cooks and Gilmore had just consistently from day one in the locker room. And so I think when he's talking about going all in terms of that aspect, I think that's what you're going to see a little bit more of. Who knows what he has in mind when he's saying all of this, but definitely wouldn't mind seeing some more impact players that can come in, be a plug and play kind of guy, come in on your roster and make an immediate impact. That's what you need at this point, especially with the laundry list of free agents that are coming up for the Dallas Cowboys. And really, it impacts the defense at that point, because a lot of the players on that list are defensive players. So again, this is a free agency you need to be aggressive on. If you're going to go all in, do it in free agency as much as possible. And then in terms of the draft, if there is a guy that you absolutely know will come in and be a plug and play kind of player, which admittedly the Cowboys struggled with this last year with their draft selections. I mean, Mozzie Smith is the biggest example you can really make out of that. But the draft and development mindset for this team has been adamant. It's just the younger talent this last season didn't pay off when they needed it to. And so especially you saw that. I'm using Mozzie as an example because he's the first round draft pick. All of the pressure is on Mozzie, to come in and make an impact and be that impact player as your first round draft selection. And he didn't. In fact, he looks like he's lost some weight. I want to say, I'm going to look this up real quick. He didn't get a lot of snaps throughout the course of the season. And it's just interesting because as a first round draft pick, yes, you have the pressure to come on. But on the other side of that, understanding what it really means to play a nose tackle and the difficulty within that position. So I'm looking right here. Give me 1 second. I'm looking to see he played on the defense a total of 304 snaps in the total defensive snaps throughout the course of the season. That's 28.41% of the snaps. So as your first round draft pick, you definitely expect more involvement from him there. And honestly, the lack of involvement doesn't come from coaching. I think it just comes from him not being quite ready to take that step yet. But when Jonathan Hankins went down with injury, that's when you needed Mozzie to step up. And again, his development has been a little bit slower. And so that second year jump from Mozzie is going to be crucial for him. Second, third year, I think will be vital parts of his football career. But in terms of the draft and kind of where I'm taking this whole point is you have to get a guy, especially in the first round, that isn't going to take a full year to develop. And not that it's a bad thing, because you've also seen guys like Jalen Tolbert, for example, who had a slower first year and then came out and made an impact his second year. When it works, it works. But in terms of where this team is, if you want to go all in, you need a guy that's a sure thing, that's going to come in and be a starter on this team and be a consistent guy. A consistent starter that grows, that's ready to start really from the time preseason comes and then grows throughout the course of the season. And so that was a really big downfall for the Cowboys, is the lack of involvement from the younger side of the team, the draft and develop side. So hopefully those year two jumps really just continue to flow in as these guys learn the scheme. And really the biggest thing that I've learned is the terminology that comes with playing is very different in college and then playing in the NFL. So hopefully there is another point of improvement, but another way that Jerry can go all in. And in terms of the contract, bringing it kind of back around to the full point is, I know you guys are upset still. I know it was emotional and I know that loss was difficult. But in terms of being all in, you have to trust that Dak Prescott is your guy for the foreseeable future because you just don't have anybody else that is going to come in and make the kind of impact that he's already proven he can make based on what he did last year. So you have to go all in with giving him that contract extension so he can take less cap room, take up less cap space, and you go from there. So paying your guys that absolutely deserve to get paid, Micah Ceedee, two other guys there. And so it's just going to be very interesting to see kind of how Jerry defines going all in throughout the course of the next few months. So we'll see. Keep an eye on that. But I know that was a big topic of discussion throughout the day on Tuesday. The last thing I really wanted to cover, and now that more has happened throughout the day, I guess there's one more thing we can cover. But Dan Quinn, the latest updates on what is going on with defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. I'm going to pull up tweets one more time. David Moore with the Dallas Morning News tweeted out that Dan Quinn would be happy to return to Dallas, but if either Seattle or Washington offer the opportunity to be a head coach, he's expected to leave, according to several people with knowledge of Quinn's thinking. David Moore also tweeting that resolution is anticipated within the next 48 hours. So within the next 2 days, by the end of the week, Friday at that point, we should know. Ironically enough, when I recorded this the first time, the Seattle Seahawks did not hire their head coach yet. And literally right as soon as I submitted that first episode, guess what they did? They hired a head coach. And so Adam Schefter tweeted out that the Seahawks are expected to hire Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald as their new head coach, according to league sources that told ESPN, finalizing the deal, but Seattle has its man. He's now officially the youngest head coach in the NFL at 36 years old. So congratulations to him. However, that means one thing in terms of Dan Quinn. It means he will stay in the NFC East regardless of what happens in the next 48 hours. Either he will go to Washington, be their head coach, or he will stay in Dallas as the defensive coordinator. When I initially was looking at where Dan Quinn could fit in and where he could be a viable head coach that could just go in and not just for this season, but a longevity kind of thinking and mindset, it was Washington and Seattle. Seattle made the most sense, being that he had history, there were ties there, kind of some unfinished business. But then Washington also made sense because why? Well, Washington is trying to blow things up, start from the ground up. The Ron Rivera era, I like that rhymed. Ron Rivera era officially coming to a close. So what does that mean? That means there is a roster that needs to be rebuilt. There is a culture that needs to be rebuilt. And Dan Quinn is the kind of guy that can go in and do it because guess what? He's done it before. When he went to Seattle, he built the thing from the ground up. He did the dang thing. The Legion of Boom era was created, and he has a Super Bowl title to prove it. And so then that also his time in Seattle led him to a head coaching position in Atlanta, and everything henceforth Atlanta back to Dallas. Y'all know the story. Well, here's the thing. If Dan were to go to Washington, it would just make sense. It would make sense for so many reasons, in the sense that, well, one, you already know what you're getting every time you see Dallas. You have history there. You know what you're getting in terms of Washington because guess what? The Cowboys have to see them multiple times a year. He knows the scheme. He's studied the scheme. He knows where there can be immediate improvements. And he's been doing that for the last 3 seasons. So it would make sense. And I would not be surprised if the Commanders offer Dan Quinn the head coaching position. I would hate it, but it makes sense. I would absolutely hate to see Dan Quinn on the sidelines twice a year as that team's head coach, and Sam Howell, just being a young quarterback, could use a stable head coach that knows how to build a winning culture and a very healthy culture. I think that's another thing that people don't really think about in terms of a football locker room is you want it to be healthy. And just like any other work environment, just like a work environment you go to every day as you're going to work, you want it to be healthy for you. And these players feel that way in the Cowboys locker room, with Mike McCarthy, yes, but also with Dan Quinn. The defensive players will run through a wall for Dan Quinn. What's interesting is a lot of these guys on free agency or heading into free agency this coming year are the Dan Quinn guys that were on those 3-year deals that followed him from Atlanta. And typically, when you see guys following you from team to team, you're a pretty good coach. And so, again, Dan knows how to build a culture that guys like, they thrive in. So it would make sense. So I'm interested to see kind of what happens there as well. And so the last thing that I guess we can talk about, because it all happened, like I said, everything happened after I submitted that first episode that I had recorded for you guys. So I guess it's a good thing that I'm having to redo it now. The last thing that happened is Micah Parsons, as you guys know, has been pretty much radio silent since the playoff loss. Hasn't said anything, didn't talk to media afterwards, and just kind of went radio silent. The only times he had tweeted, and that's what I'm trying to pull up now, is one, at Skip Bayless, when Skip had tweeted kind of during the game, can't wait for Micah Parsons' podcast tomorrow. That's what he does best. Obviously a shot at Micah. Micah had tweeted him back, quote tweeting him. You can go read it because I don't want to get in trouble for saying some words on here. So you can go read that. Micah also tweeted in terms of some comments that his brother had made. He tweeted a statement on that. And then his most recent tweet was, y'all just want a reaction out of me. It's not going to work. LOL. I'm at peace. Love. With a blue heart emoji. And then after that, we just hadn't heard from Micah. So that all changed again today on Wednesday when he made an appearance on the Edge podcast that he does with Bleacher Report. And this was the first time Micah had addressed a lot of things. And the main things I want to cover is what he said following the loss. I heard him talking a little bit about Dak Prescott. And he also, of course, addressed Skip. And he kind of shed some light in saying that, Skip was the one asking him to go on his show and that he chose not to because he said, I just wrote an article about it. He said pretty much, I know your ties and who you are, and I didn't want to be associated with that. I'm paraphrasing, my words, not his, but pretty much. Like I said, you can go to profootballnetwork.com and go read the articles on the whole thing that I wrote about. I would appreciate that very much. If you go to our website and then you go to the Cowboys sector, you're going to find all of that there. So the more you know, if you didn't know already. And the next thing that he talks about, John Machota actually tweeted this, making life a little easy, having some quotes that I can read for you guys. He talked about the Cowboys' playoff loss to the Packers. And this was the one thing everybody has been waiting to hear from Micah. Micah said, it was completely embarrassing and unacceptable, and it took him a while to show his face in public. Ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. He also said he's hopeful the Cowboys will be all in this offseason. He said, quote, I hope that we go out and get all the players we're missing because we didn't do that this year. I hope that we challenge ourselves, become better, and become greater. During this time, I was trying to tune in a live stream and I was catching parts of it. He also addressed Dak Prescott and his faith in Dak Prescott as well. So like I said, I'll have more articles up about the whole episode, talking about everything Micah covers in this because it was the first time that he spoke. So I want to know what you think about Micah's comments. Tweet me and tell me what you think about all of this, what Micah said, the whole thing, where you want Dan Quinn to go, if you want Dan to stay in Dallas, if you want him to go to Washington, and what you think about Jerry's comments, since we also talked about that as well. Let me know what you think about Jerry's all-in mindset. I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions or topics you want me to cover next week on the podcast, again, you can tweet me at Jess Nevarez _ and let me know. But until then, guys, that's all I have for you for today. Unfortunately, our time here has come to an end. But as always, I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Thank you so, so much for all your love and all of your support. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. Y'all are just the best. And like I said, we're all in this together. We're going through it. But until next time, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Go be awesome. Check on your friends and family. Tell them you love them. I love you guys, and we will talk soon. Have a good day. Bye, guys.